And here we are. Here we are. Here we are. Here we are. Yeah, the music always ends like 5 seconds after the after the whole thing is done. So like I just sit here like staring, waiting for me to come up. How's everybody doing this evening? I got Genosis in the house. Tech for your needs. Pamela, Danny, Kayvon. I got chat like right in front of me tonight. I've been working on the Painfully Honest studio, getting some stuff. I got a teleprompter that has a screen under it. And so I just put the chat window up there. So now I can look right at the chat and say hello to everybody. And then I can look down here and like highlight people's comments and stuff. So Don's here, Steven, of course, been saying hello. Jermaine here as always. Good to see you. Good to see you. Yeah. So we got some exciting things going on this evening. I mean, well, I don't know. Exciting might be a strong word, but we got some things going on. Oh yeah. So one thing that we're gonna do, I've been trying to organize myself here and get things going on. Good evening, Sean. Good to see you. Uh, just get some organization going on and sort of put I guess, some sort of shape to these live streams, because one thing that I want to do, I want to find a couple of things that are interesting for the week that I want to talk about, that maybe I can do a little later and grab and grab out and show people, as like a separate video. So what I'm going to do in these things is I'm gonna sort of blow through talking about some stuff. Then we'll have some questions here and there, and I'll later on go back and grab the stuff out. But I want to be able to use some of this stuff, for the people who don't dig into like an hour and a half, 2 hour long podcast or live stream or whatever this thing is. Texas being Texas. It's not cold in Texas anymore, man. I feel so bad. I mean, there are no basements in Texas, are there? I just thought of this as I was looking at people's first floors being like totally destroyed by water. All those frozen pipes. Ah, terrible. Terrible. But so yeah, I'm gonna put a little bit more structure to these things. I'm putting a little bit more structure to the channel in general. Okay, so yeah, for those of you who don't know who I am and are watching this thing right now, my name is Jason. Painfully Honest Tech is the name of the channel. Do this every Tuesday night live stream, talk about tech happenings and that kind of stuff, and then we do videos. So here's the new schedule. The new schedule is videos on Tuesday and Saturday, with maybe another video in there, and then lives. Wait. No, it's videos on Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. That's what it is. Anyway, I know what the schedule is. I promise. I'm kind of going back and forth between 2 and 3 videos, and then live streams on Tuesdays in the evening, just like we're doing here, and then Fridays in the late morning we will also have a live stream. So you guys can get ready for that. If you're not subscribed to the channel already, I don't know how you showed up here, but if you're not subscribed to the channel already, then go ahead and do that. Hit the bell notification, all notifications on, so that you know when the next Painfully Honest, whatever it is that's happening, is happening. Let's see. I don't want to be remiss in mentioning the fact that the channel and these live streams are now sponsored by the good people over at Restream. If you're not familiar with Restream, or maybe you were familiar with Restream a while back and aren't familiar with what they're doing now, basically Restream is now like a live web platform to be able to go on and sort of run a show through Restream. So if you're familiar with StreamYard or any of those other web-based platforms, you can do that. Restream also offers you the opportunity to stream out not just to like a few different platforms, but I think it's something like 30 or so different platforms at one time. So you can do Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, I don't know. There's all these ones overseas. There's all kinds of things. So Restream has been kind enough to sponsor the channel, and in honor of that, I'm going to say, if you're interested in the streaming game, you want to get streaming and you want to do it easy, link with my my sort of code down in the description below. It's restream.io / join/PHT is the special link that you can use to get $10 off. $10 off your restream, and so yes. Um, there are other links in the description as well. I don't know if you know that, but I wrote a novel. Link to the novel in the description, way down there in the bottom. I've put out like 5 records of original music in the course of my life. I'm an old person, and I knew the bride when she used to rock and roll, as it were. And so so you can go check those out. My music is available on every platform, Spotify, Apple, Tidal, whatever, all those places. Star City is the name of the group from way back when. And then there's also Sad Iron Music, SADIRON MUSIC, as well as just my own name, Jason T. Lewis. And you can go check that stuff out. I'd love it feels weird. I never tell people about the music. Oh, Jermaine, I like that tagline. Why stream when you can restream? Yeah. And speaking of restreaming, if you're coming in late and you want to see what's going on here, I'm going to put some little like time stampy things in here so you can get from one place to the next without having to fast forward or whatever it is. Mr. Who's the Boss. I kind of want to talk about Mr. Who's the Boss here in a little while, but before we do that, we're gonna talk about this LG thing. Okay, so LG, one of my favorite smartphone manufacturers. If you've watched the channel, you'll know that the V series phones are some of my favorites, if not my favorites overall. And I've just always really loved what they bring to the table on the V series. If you're not familiar, we got Mauricio watching right now on his V60. If you're not familiar with the V series, started out with the V10. It was kind of a weird looking phone. It had a plastic back that came off and you could replace the batteries. It had stainless steel rails down the side, and it was just an incredibly chunky phone. It had this little screen on the top that was a little ticker kind of thing that you could see your music playing and all your notifications and stuff like that. I mean, that's kind of been folded into Android in general since that time. But the V10 was super cool. But the big thing about the V series phones, if you're not familiar, is that the V series phones had a headphone jack. Now, I'm pointing at you with a twist tie because I feel like I need to emphasize that it had a headphone jack. And that headphone jack wasn't just a headphone jack. It had like a special quad DAC inside, and the amp was a little bit more special than the headphone jacks that were in the phones of the time. And then there was the V20 came out, and it also had a replaceable replaceable battery, and V30, V35, V40, V50, V60, all of them changed slightly. They became a little bit more mundane looking after a bit of time, which was fine, I guess. LG wanted to fit in with the crowd, and the sort of rounded edge slab phone is the way that the industry went. But all along, the V series phones, they kept that quad DAC, right? The quad DAC to me is the most important aspect of the V series. But that's not to say that the V series phones themselves were not beastly phones in their own right. They always had the latest processor. They always had upgraded specs. I think the V series phones were the first phone to have triple lenses on the back of the phone. I think that was the V30 or 40. I can't remember exactly which. And this past year with the V60, they came out with this dual screen case. So you stuck the V60 in the case, and it folded out to be like 2 separate screens of the same size. The V series, the G series, Danny is right. G series has the quad DAC. I think at least on the last 2 iterations, it got the quad DAC. I don't think it initially did have it though. I think the first few years it was special to the V series. But when I so when Apple took the headphone jack, when they finally mustered up the courage to take the headphone jack away from the iPhone, which was in 2017, I believe. That was the iPhone 7. Uh, the V series, I mean, it's like it almost feels like the clock started ticking on the V series, like, and right away, because within a year, most of the major manufacturers had either ditched their headphone jacks or planned to ditch their headphone jacks, and so I think the last year Samsung had a headphone jack was the Note 10 and S10 line. Correct me if I'm wrong out there, Chad, but I believe that was the last time that the Samsung series had any kind of headphone jack. But let's be clear. The headphone jacks on the Samsung phones sounded good. They were good sounding headphone jacks, but they were off the shelf parts. They were, not anything special. You could go to any parts supplier, get that headphone jack, put it in your phone, right? And so the V series, I don't understand. I don't understand LG. I just don't, because LG had this unicorn of a phone, and with each passing year, it became more and more of a unicorn, in the sense that, like, the V60, I think the only thing that you could really like knock it for was that it didn't have 120 hertz, and it wasn't a quad HD screen, but it was an OLED screen. LG makes great OLED panels, as anybody who's watched an LG OLED TV knows. But it had the Snapdragon 865, I believe it was. Yeah, the 865. It had all the latest bells and whistles. It had 8 gigabytes of RAM, which some people think is not enough, but nobody bought it, and nobody bought the V50, and nobody. I just don't understand. Now, there are plenty of people out there in the world who are huge fans of audio, right? And audio is best experienced through that 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, and a good source. And the V series provided that. And so it's been kind of a bummer to watch LG sort of put that phone out and never go to the target audience and say, "Hey, are you an audiophile or a hi-fi enthusiast or whatever you want to call yourself? This is the only phone on the market that you can get that can drive your special fancy headphones that you paid more than the phone costs for. This is the only phone." And so you buy this phone. They never did that. I don't understand why. And now, over the past few weeks, LG has there have been rumblings that LG might be getting out of the smartphone game. Something and they've lost so much money year over year over year over year in the smartphone game. Although they are still the fourth largest seller of smartphones in the United States, they just kept losing money. They put out these flagship phones that competed both in specs but also in price with the other phones. They did knock down the price of the V60 this past year, and offered a lot of value for, I think, an extra $100. You get the dual screen case. Um, but the but the writing was already on the wall. I mean, the writing has been on the wall maybe for LG since the G5. If you're not familiar with the G5, it came out the same year as the V10, and I guess there were boot loop issues with the software that would basically brick the phone, and that sort of dried up a lot of goodwill with the customers. And then LG has done what they could to try and get the customers back. They give a 2-year manufacturer's warranty, where everybody else gets one from other manufacturers. But I don't even know. I mean, I know LG has a marketing department because I have interacted with people from LG's marketing department. But how they've advertised these phones, how they've tried to break into the US flagship market, they do very well in the US, like mid-range and lower end phone market. But the thing is, like, I guess that's just not doing it. They had a deal. Well, rumor was they were working on a deal with a Vietnamese company, and the Vietnamese company, now it sounds like that whole deal is not going to happen. They had a they had a they were going to buy the North American business from LG, and now I guess they're not. And then today, the big news today was that LG's successor to the V60, which a lot of people are calling the V70, LG's internal name for it was Rainbow. I don't know why they would call the phone Rainbow, but that was their internal name for it. So they had this phone, and it was just about to be field tested, and then the news comes down. It says that, let me see, what is the verbiage here? We've got LG's V60 Successor put on hold. This is an article from GSM Arena, but I've seen this in a bunch of other places. So this is a report that comes from the Korean outlet Chosun, and basically they were going to put the Rainbow out there for field testing, and now they have postponed the testing and release of that phone for in an indefinite amount of time. And when you're talking, like, we're in March now, so we're coming up to the end of Q1, quarter number one of the financial year. This is when phone companies start ramping up for spring, summer, so they're bringing their phones out, and the V series phones usually come out in that springtime window. So I'm afraid, people. I'm afraid that LG is I'm afraid that LG is done. I'm afraid it's like stick a fork in them. They are done. Speaking of sticking a fork in it, Danny says he's having steak frites this evening for dinner, as they say over there in the France. And this really bums me out, and it bums me out on multiple levels. LG, while they might not have been, a very staunch competitor for the Apples and the Samsungs of the smartphone world, LG was at least a major, like, worldwide corporation in the market, spending time and money, at least staying in the game. So this just shows more of what I think we've been afraid of all along, which is that the smartphone wars are over. They have been over. I made a video 2 years ago saying the smartphone wars are over, and and I think at the end of the day, like, we kind of lost, because once we lose any kind of uniqueness with like the V series, if once we lose any kind of thing that's special or unique or different, or a company that might do something that would push the other companies to do something interesting. I mean, now it's basically down to Samsung and Apple, and that might not be the case in the rest of the world, but in the North American market, we're down to Samsung and Apple, and Google has their. I think they've found a spot for the Pixel phones. It's like, that sub $800, and with the A models. Ooh, we got a new member. Tech for your needs, the new membership. Bam, bam. Thank you, sir. Thank you. So much appreciated. Membership is an awesome thing, and member only live streams are coming, people. Member only live streams are coming. Sometime next week. Gonna have the first members only live stream. Members also get a chance to help me figure out, the whole deal with questions for the Q&As that I like to do. So membership has its privileges, as they say. Can't believe I just said that, but it does. It does. Membership does have its privileges. But to finish off this LG thought, now they were going to have this Rolly phone that like it pulled out like a little scroll, and I guess that thing was put on hold, and now we've got the V series. The V series defunct, I guess. the whole thing about the V series too is that the rainbow wasn't necessarily going to be like the V70. I don't even know if they were going to keep the headphone jack, because if you look at the LG wing, the wing doesn't have a headphone jack there either. I mean, it's a the whole form factor might be the reason that's dictated, but yeah, the at this point, as I think Genosis just said, it's now Samsung can be lazy. Somebody just said Samsung can be lazy. Yeah. Yes. Genosis just said, lack of competition might make Samsung lazy in the future. I mean, there'll always be Apple there, and Apple doesn't seem to see. I don't look at Apple in competition with other Android phones, because I just don't think that the people who use Apple devices are the same. They have the same wants and needs as the people who use Android phones. So I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see what ends up happening, because for me, there's no phone for me to go to now. There's no audio centric phone. And yes, wireless headphones have come a long way, I guess. And I've got the AirPods Max here. I did my long-term review on the AirPods Max yesterday. If you haven't had a chance to check out that video, please go and do so. AirPods Max, we can talk about that a little bit here in a minute if you guys want to. But wireless headphones have come a long way, but I'm sad that LG's out of the game. And Huawei, at least for us Huawei in the US and, well, North America in general, is not really a player. And I don't know that they ever will be. So LG is done. That's what I'm saying. It's just a matter, like the writing is on the wall. It's just a matter of LG finally like cutting the cord. and there may be no new flagships from LG this year, from the way it's sounding, and that bums me out. That really bums me out. And I know a lot of people in the chat here have been saying like, oh, I'll never use an LG phone or anything like that. LG, I mean, the phones weren't perfect. Don't get me wrong. The phones weren't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, because they they didn't do a great job with their own software. They had their own, I don't even know if it had a name. Most people called it LG crap software. It never got updated. The V60, I think, is just now getting Android 11. And so it's a sad state of affairs. LG kind of did this to themselves with poor marketing and poor support for the phones. And now we've got we've got Apple and Samsung and whoever else can. I mean, the mid-range and the lower end market are really going to sort of be more important now than they ever were before. The flagship market is not going to be as big a deal. So what we've got JP in from Japan. What time is it in Japan right now? It must be like, is it like dinner time? I don't even know. So Genosis says you got to rely on external hi-fi DACs and such, and that's true. And there are some companies now that are coming out with better quality DACs. 10:28 a.m. in Japan. Okay, what am I drinking? God's Own Liquor, H2O. That's all I drink. Well, I mean, I drink coffee and sometimes the odd soda, but yeah. Yeah, so the Dragonflies are very good. USB-C headphones might become a bigger deal. I would have thought by now that we would have seen more USB USB-C headphones than we have, but we haven't. So it's kind of a drag. I, I guess I'm a purist. I look back to when the iPhone came out. The iPhone was the progeny of the iPod, right? And the iPod was all about music, and so now we don't have that. And so smartphones to me always had some kind of connection to music and entertainment and that kind of thing, and now it seems like that is gone. Um, yeah, and Franklin's right. I mean, USB DACs are. I mean, you at least have the potential to have better quality than any other headphone jack, except for the LG DAC. And even I mean, if you put the LG quad DAC up against, purpose built DAC amps that you buy separately, it's not gonna beat like the huge competition that's out there. I mean, there's tons and tons and tons of those things out there that, range from $20 all the way up to $2,000 and probably higher than that. Um, but the problem is, I don't know. They're just now it's an extra thing. And I just don't think that the majority of people don't care enough. Um, with Samsung, and this wasn't discussed all that much. I mean, it's been a couple of years since Apple took the headphones out of the box, but Samsung didn't only take the charger out of the box with the S21 series. Samsung also took the headphones out of the box, and that to me is a bigger deal than I think most people who would be watching this live stream or watching smartphone related content or anything like that. I don't think I think that most people in this milieu would really understand or think about it, but the majority of people who use headphones with their phones still use the headphones that were given to them in the box with their phone. And it's it's really and but now what are they going to use, because they're not getting headphones in the box with their phone. um so Hyperlink has a good point here. The Razer phone did have a built-in high quality 24-bit DAC. The Razer phone 2, I mean, that's still one of my favorite phones, but let's remember that the Razer phone 2 came out in 2017 or 2018. 2018, I think it came out. So that's a 3-year-old phone at this point. And unfortunately, Razer is not making any more phones because they couldn't sell the Razer phone. I mean, we can call it the curse of MKBHD for them. Not that his criticism wasn't warranted. If you're not familiar, Razer came out with the Razer Phone 1. It was just called the Razer Phone. And it was a really cool phone. It was more focused toward gaming at a time when Android phones weren't as powerful. They didn't have as much RAM, et cetera, as a rule. So Razer came out and said, "Hey, here's a phone for gamers." Unfortunately, the camera was a tuber. A tuber. Is a potato a tuber? I don't know. Anyway, it was a potato. And MKBHD just ruthlessly destroyed the camera on that phone, and nobody bought it. The Razer even like improved. So basically, when you have a smartphone camera, it's not really the lenses or anything like that that makes as much a difference as the software that you're using. And so what ends up happening is Razer improved the phone by updating the software. They improved the camera, but at the end of the day, like MKBHD knocking the camera on a phone, or MKBHD like really having a super strong opinion in any way about a phone, is the kiss of death. Same thing happened with the LG G8. He basically was just like kind of like ambivalent about the LG G8, and that was enough to That was enough to just, sort of kill it. Um, but yeah, that Hyperlink is again making these good points. Like a 3-year-old phone, but it had the 120 hertz that everybody's like all like hot in the pants area for these days. It had the Dolby Atmos, so. And he says that he updated his software to the Google Pixel APK, the APK being the sort of software kernel that it uses to run the camera, and it's high quality stuff that just didn't get off the ground. I mean, I think in 2019 you could buy a Razer phone on Amazon for like 300, like a Razer Phone 2 on Amazon for like $350. That was crazy. Danny says he has to go walk his cat. Is that like a euphemism or something? I can't see. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I guess that's something to do. So Sean says if you care about sound quality and versatility, then get a phone with an amazing quality DAC. That's that, and you're probably right. The only issue with that is the whole portability thing. If you're talking about a third party DAC, I used to carry around a DAC that you rubber banded to the back of your phone. It came with a rubber band, and you were supposed to rubber band it to the back of your phone. It had a little USB cable, and then it was untoward. Tell your cat to calm down. That's right. I mean, how loud can a cat get, really? I have tinnitus too, or tinnitus. I don't know. I've always pronounced it tinnitus. A quick walk up and down the hallway. That cat is spoiled, man. That's what's happening there. You have allowed that cat to run your entire life. It sounds like. But hey, I mean, in these trying times, any port in a storm, I suppose. Getting a Juan Bagnell vibe from the title. Yeah. Well, Juan and I think see this whole LG thing eye to eye. We've bonded over our love for LG many times. I do need. So now that I'm doing these on my own, I don't have like all of the audio cues. So I need a Flossy calm down white shoes little audio cue so that I can so that I can get Danny's cat under control, I guess. Oh man, it's funny because I've got the chat here in the Restream window. Hey, did I mention that the channel is sponsored by Restream now? Check it out down in the comments in the description below. But the Restream chat is faster than the YouTube chat by like 10 or 15 seconds. It's crazy. So Eric says he's an LG fan and he gets sad at the thought of LG not making any phones anymore. I don't know if they're not going to make any phones or if they're just going to make their mid and lower tier phones. I don't know what they're going to do, but it is a drag. But man, I don't know. Part of me wants to just be like, I'm done with you've heard me say this. I'm done with smartphones. You've heard me say it. I'm allowing this comment to come through MC2 Tech Reviews because I don't understand what it means, even though it has a yeah. I don't understand. You'll have to explain. Would I do a live stream with Flossy? Yeah, absolutely. I've been on a live stream with Flossy at least one time on Viper's Friday Night Viper show a couple of years ago. At this point, Flossy came on and it was definitely a good time. It was definitely a good time. Flossie is a pretty intense dude, and I like that because you can't really get anything by Flossie, and he will broker no poop, no shit from anyone. Um, so if you're in the chat in a live stream, and Flossie Carter's on the stream, he will take you down, which I appreciate because people out there on the internet, they just think they're keyboard warrior and all over the place. I don't know if I've told you guys the story of like when I did the Can You Trust episode on Flossie Carter. Um, so it was I'm a big Floss fan. Okay, so let's just get it out there. I'm a big fan of his, and I think he's totally unique to the YouTube tech game, as it were. And I said as much in the Can You Trust episode that I did about him. But when people, of course, the Can You Trust series was relatively new at that time, and people see that Can You Trust Flossie Carter is the title of the video, and oh my god, like people didn't even watch the video. They were just coming in guns blazing like you can't talk and the people who the people who stayed and watched the video appreciated it. But that's still, of all the Can You Trust videos that I did, which I think I did like 20 or 25 of them all told, and like Marquez Brownlee, I did one on MKBHD and on Lou and on Linus and on all these people who also have big followings. Um, I get comments on the Flossie Carter Can You Trust video pretty much every day of the week still to this day, and that video is almost like 2.5, maybe almost 3 years old at this point. Um, so Flossie's it's funny because I heard that he does it. I don't know if he still does it, but at the time he did a Sunday night stream, and he was doing a Sunday night stream one time, and I think it was Zach who messaged me and was just like, "Hey, Flossie Carter's talking about you on his live stream." So so I went and joined the chat, and he was just like, "Oh my god, I was about ready to go, to go ham on that guy. I was, I saw that title. He didn't, he didn't even he didn't ask me if he could use my picture. He didn't tell me the video was coming. He didn't tell me anything. All of a sudden there's just this video." And ultimately he was really cool about it. And really appreciated the video. And I'm glad because he is a really good guy, and is one of the only originals on YouTube in the tech game. He's still got his thing that he does. He does it his way, and he's done it that way for as long as YouTube has existed, pretty much. So, I mean, Floss is the real deal. I would love to get back on a stream with him one of these days. But I saw somebody ask if LG was gonna remove the headphone jack, or the USB-C like Apple. So I don't know what to think about Apple right now. There's all these different, like, so Apple's gonna take away. Well, I guess I can't really tell. You guys tell me what this headline seems to make me think is that Apple is going to not only take away the not only take away the lightning port on the iPhone 13, but they're not gonna go USB-C. So is it that we're gonna now see the now we're gonna see the wireless portless iPhone that Taylor Swift Tech has been jonesing for all these years? Um, I guess MagSafe is a decent way to charge the phone. I'm not going to say that it's not. Um, yeah, Apple will find the courage to never even have the USB-C port. Um, They're just going to go straight from proprietary to nothing. And honestly, like, I don't really care. I know that in like a lot of people's estimation, going to going to a portless phone is going to really be a problem for a lot of, a lot of people who, don't have money to buy accessories or whatever. But at the same time, like, if MagSafe is a viable way to make this happen, then I guess, like, it's okay. It's okay with me if they make it a viable thing. But the problem is, like, they've already started. So this is Apple creating a problem that they can then fix. And they took away the headphone jack and they created AirPods. They took away the charger from the box and they created MagSafe. And now MagSafe is going to become the way to go. And so they'll be selling tons and tons of MagSafe chargers and accessories and that kind of thing. At the end of the day, I don't know if, well, by this time next year, every major player in the smartphone industry will have taken the chargers out of their boxes. And that, to me, it just shows what a ridiculously sort of follower kind of mentality we have here with all of this. Because here's the thing. I don't know if you guys watched Mr. Who's the Boss's the real reason they took the charger out of the box, and he the truth about it. I think it was like the truth about the whole thing. Here's the deal. So I'm going to summarize his argument. His argument was, they said that it was going to be, good for the environment, which it might be good for their environmental, like, footprint as a company because they're reducing their use of materials. But if you don't have a charger in the box, then the person has to buy a charger. And so instead of getting one thing, in the mail from your phone, like whoever you buy the phone from, you end up getting that plus a box from Amazon, and on and on and on. You might end up with like 2 or 3 different boxes that show up at your house, which is not necessarily good for the environment. But I don't think, as much as a byproduct of taking the charger out of the box might be good for the environment, I think that at the end of the day, as Hawker Mustang says here, it's about money. If a company ever tells you that any decision that they make on that high a level, taking something out of a box, changing materials, all that kind of stuff, then if they tell you that it's for any other reason besides money, they are at best obfuscating the truth, but at worst, they're lying about it. Now, it might be that there is some environmental, like, plus side to taking the charger out of the box. But as many people have pointed out, when Apple took the charger out of the box, they put a USB-C to Lightning cable in the box. And if you were somebody who hadn't bought a recent iPhone, then you didn't have a USB-C to Lightning cable. You had a USB-A to Lightning cable. So even if you still had your old charger, you couldn't use it with the Apple device. I mean, I guess you could still use the old cable, but you couldn't use the cable that they sent with the phone. So that in and of itself, if you don't give them the opportunity, to have the ability to use the thing that you're giving them, then how is that eco-friendly? Like, sending everybody who doesn't have last year's iPhone a cable they can't use cannot possibly be eco-friendly. And that's the hypocrisy of it. And there's, like, this is a rhetorical rhetorical and sort of ethical thing that companies and people do. Like, this is actually Machiavelli was the person who described this phenomenon of, like, creating a problem and then finding the solution for it yourself. Um, and there are a bunch of different names for it, but basically, Apple has Apple created a problem by taking the charger out of the box, and they're creating the solution for it by by putting by putting MagSafe in there, right? Um, and so when the iPhone 13 comes out and there are no ports whatsoever, then they won't send a cable. You'll have to buy a MagSafe puck, or I don't even know. At the end of the day, like, the Mr. Who's the Boss video brought up some good points. But this is one of the things that always kind of bothers me about tech YouTube, is that, yes, it was a critical video in the sense that he was critiquing the reasoning behind Samsung and Apple taking the chargers out of the box. However, um, it wasn't critical to the point that I think it needed to be, in the sense that while he says they say it's going to be better for the environment, but the truth is, um, it's not going to be better for the environment. In fact, if people have to buy 2 or 3 more packages, like with Samsung, if you don't have your old headphones, or they've broken because they're cheap anyway, and you don't have a charging brick, then you buy the S21, right? Or the S21 Ultra, whatever. You buy this phone, and then you buy a charging brick, and then you buy some headphones. Now, Samsung hopes that you buy some of the headphones that they make, right? Samsung hopes that you buy the Buds Pro or the Buds Plus or the Buds Live or something like that. But the Buds Pro are $200 headphones. And if you're somebody who traditionally uses the headphones that come in the box with your phone, then a $200 headphone purchase might not be the best, might not be the way that you're going to go, right? Um, and the thing is, like, I wanted to hear Mr. Who's the Boss say, I wanted to hear him say, while there might be, he said, that there would be some sort of potential for environmental gains, at least as the companies themselves within a silo existed. What he didn't say, and what I felt like needs to be said about these companies and how they are just, well, they're not pulling the wool over our eyes because we're not even looking. So they're not even looking, right? So people aren't paying attention. So Apple and Samsung and all these companies can do whatever they want to do. And everybody's going to, I mean, Samsung, they watched the iPhone 12 sales. Everybody went and kept on buying iPhone 12s without even a hitch. Yes, people like myself and other people made videos about how consumer unfriendly and hostile taking the charger out of the box was and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, like, no great chorus rose up and boycotted Apple for, yet again doing this whole thing. So Samsung's like, well, nobody, everybody's still buying iPhone, so I guess we could take the headphones out, or the headphones and the charger out of the box. Nobody is saying, nobody of Mr. Who's the Boss's size is saying that they took those things out of the box. They said it was because of environmental concerns. And while that might be partially the case, they are lying to you if you don't believe that they did it because they're making more money by doing it. So Apple sells their 5-watt charger that you could buy, that you got for free in your phone box for these past like 12 years or whatever. Apple sells that for $20 now. And yes, you can get cheaper stuff from other providers of stuff. Go on Amazon and you can't swing a dead cat without hitting a cheap charger, right? So Apple took away the headphone jack, not because they had courage, right? They took away the headphone jack because they bought a headphone company and they wanted to sell more headphones. And then they made the AirPods, and yeah, now they are the number one headphone company in the world, right? They sell more headphones than anyone. So Samsung is just trying to do what Apple has done. They created their own line of headphones that integrate pretty well with their phones, and they are hoping that people will buy the Beats and pay the 20, $25, whatever, for another charger and all that kind of stuff. Nobody that I've heard on the scale of, like a million plus YouTuber number, like follower number, nobody has said these companies are hostile toward you. They're stealing from you. They are tricking you into buying their additional products because they created this problem. They created this problem, and then they ride in like white knights with the solution to the problem. Now, that's not to say that the AirPods aren't a good product, or I'm not a big fan of the Buds, but Apple created this problem and then they fixed it. Samsung is doing the same thing. And now Apple's going to take away the port. Now Apple's going to take away the port. And, everybody thought Farman Tech says MagSafe is overrated. I think when we saw MagSafe with the iPhone 12, everybody thought, oh, this will be a cool way to attach to attach some sort of accessory or whatever, when really the accessory argument was just a Trojan horse to get MagSafe into the mix, so that when Apple does take away the Lightning port and doesn't replace it with USB-C, then MagSafe will be there and they'll have the solution to the problem that they created. Phones are gonna go portless eventually. I'm not saying that phones should never lose their ports, but it's disingenuous. And there are really no big YouTubers out there who are willing to say, Apple, Samsung, whoever, you are actively screwing your consumers, and they're happily turning around and asking for more. But I guess if that's the way that the consumer population is going to act, yes, I saw the comment that somebody left earlier that boycotts don't work. So I guess we're just at the place where we have to take what we get and like it. And yeah, Fat Produce, you're right. Juan does call those guys out all the time, and and I've said it, and other people have said it. But I want to hear Mr. Who's the Boss. I want to hear Marquez. The closest that we've probably gotten is Lou, and Lou. I don't know if people take what Lou says seriously enough to sort of get upset about it. I want to hear these 500,000 million plus sub YouTubers call out these manufacturers when they do this shady stuff, because until there's a voice that actually will impact those companies' numbers. If Marquez would have come out and said, you know what, the iPhone 12 might be a great phone, but I think that taking away the charging brick from the box is a no-go, and I can't recommend that you buy this phone because, this is Apple going one step too far. I mean, I don't know if he feels that way, but if he said that, Apple would have been in trouble because he's got what, almost 15 million people that listen to him, and he has been able to single-handedly destroy destroy um, other products. But I mean, maybe that's asking too much. Maybe that's asking too much. Um, I mean, having talked to Marquez, just in a very casual way, and having talked to Justine, on a much more extensive basis, I know that both of them are not the kind of people who make those kinds of statements. Marquez will definitely express his opinion, and when his opinion is negative, he'll put it out there. But he's not a crusader, and Justine is fantastic at everything that she does. I mean, but she's like the enthusiast. She's the person who loves the product. She's like, for all the people that watch her videos, she is the cipher, the stand-in, the avatar for them. So I don't expect her to start, ranting and raving either. But I mean, I do see Mr. Who's the Boss start to make some videos that are being somewhat critical of some things that are happening in the tech industry. I was disappointed that while he made a good argument in the video that he made about the Chargers, he didn't take it to the ultimate degree. He made the good point up to the place where he said, you know, it may, even though they're trying to do this, it may create even more waste. And by doing that, not, not, not actually have the outcome that they desire, which is true. But he never made the turn and said, so clearly they did this to make money, and that's really all that you can ever expect from a company. I mean, I don't even know if I really hold it against them so much as I don't like for companies to be able to prop themselves up as something and then behind the scenes be something very different. I mean, I'm not going to bring individual politics into it, but I mean, this is something that we see in the political world quite often. We hear people say all the right things. We hear people say the stuff the stuff that they think that people want to hear in order to get their vote. And at the end of the day, they aren't speaking truth. They aren't speaking their truth. They aren't speaking, somebody else's truth. They aren't speaking any truth whatsoever. If Apple had just come out and said, you know what, we can keep the prices lower because we save X amount of, pennies on the dollar by taking the charger out and making the box smaller, so you can still have your iPhone at the price that it was last year, and thank you very much, I would be fine with that. But this whole argument about hiding behind the great green flag of eco-friendliness is just it's not hypocritical, because I do believe that they have those goals in mind, but it is a half truth, I guess. And I would love for the companies that we love, and the people that represent us and all that kind of thing. I would love to see those people speak truth and go from there. So anyway, I mean, if the port goes away, I don't care. But I hope that Apple figures out a way to bring their customers along without having to charge them something extra. I guess that's the disingenuous Yugo. Thank you. Thank you for that word. That was a word that I was looking for, and you found it. I appreciate it. Yeah, very disingenuous. JP, thank you for stopping by. Appreciate you being here. I hope it's a good day in Japan. Hope you're staying safe and all that kind of stuff. Um, Farm and Tech asks, aren't they going to make more waste by going portless? Now, now all the chargers are useless. Well, see, the thing is, like, you'll still have to have the charger. You'll just have to plug the MagSafe puck into it instead of like the cable that you would plug into the butt of your phone, right? So, so yeah, I mean, you'll still need the charger for a while, until everybody goes to wireless charging or something. The truth of the matter is, though, MagSafe does a good job. Wireless chargers do a good job. But if you want to charge your phone fast, you plug it in, right? And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. I mean, the battery technology may change. We've heard for years about graphene technology that might come in and change the way that things go with batteries and that kind of thing. But I don't know. It hasn't shown up yet, and we've been talking about it for at least 3, 4, maybe 5 years. And Hawker Mustang says disingenuous marketing and virtue signaling. Yes, I think that's right. I mean, the phrase virtue signaling, I think, is sometimes misunderstood and sometimes overused. I hear a lot of YouTubers use virtue signaling as a phrase, and I don't think that it's necessarily bad to sort of wear your own virtues on your sleeve, but it's bad when you're putting those virtues out there. You've code shifted into this mode of speech, but it's disingenuous. It's not your whole truth, right? So that then sends a signal to the people buying the phone that says, oh, well, I mean, it's going to be more eco-friendly. I'm somebody who wants to be eco-friendly, so I'm going to buy this product. It's the disingenuousness of that bothers me. I mean, I don't think that virtue signaling is necessarily a bad thing, but yeah, I when it's not the entire story, when it's there to like sell something, then it's not a good thing. Michael says, I've enjoyed your videos. Thanks for what you do. My next phone is V50 or V60. The 60 is really big. It is really big. I imagine it's not the easiest to jog with in a phone sleeve. No, that much is true. And I have both, and the V50 is a much easier phone to handle. I'll say that. So if you're going for one or the other, and I've heard, and I mean, this is, you can take this for what it's worth. I've heard people say on the internet that they prefer the sound of the DAC in the V50 over the V60. People have probably said the same thing in the opposite as well. but yeah, I mean, if I could only have one, I think I'd keep the V50, just because it does have that smaller form factor. And yeah, buy a naked running band. What is that? Is that legal? I don't know, man. Yeah, the Velvet is a really attractive phone. I have the wing. Do you have the wing? Yes, I do. Thank you very much. Should I like pay attention to people who ask for shout outs? Well, I guess I just did. So there. Dismablu. I don't even know how to say that. There's your shout out. But yeah, the whole virtue. So here's the here's something that bothers me about this whole virtue signaling. Well, it's not really an argument, but when people accuse people of virtue signaling, now virtue signaling is, um, those people are also, by doing that, virtue signaling themselves, right? Um, because they say virtue signaling, which is like, you know, like dog whistle speak for, I don't know, libtard or something. Like, I don't even know what it's dog whistle speak for, but you know, everybody's doing it. You gotta, when you're involved in anything that has something to do with humans and human nature and how humans get along in the world, uh, you always have to listen for what the dog whistle frequency is saying. Whatever is being said over and above what is actually being said is what people actually mean. So, um, okay, I get the explanation. Naked running band is the best running accessory you can get. I guarantee it. But what is it? What is it? I have a picture in my mind. Um, I don't want to. I don't. I'm going to shout out Aldo because he's a channel member, so he gets the shout out without qualification. Um, so Mr. Who's the Boss had LG on notice today. Um, I haven't seen what he put out recently, but yeah, well, I'll definitely check that out. I mean, he is getting feisty. I will give him that. I appreciate the feistiness. Still can't get over Batwoman making her, I don't know what this means. I don't I didn't see that movie, I guess. I don't know. Naked Running Band just put out their first record? Oh, cool. Is it is it pop? Yeah. So oh man. I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know what I'm talking about. Um at the end of the day, people are going to do what they're going to do. I would say somebody said earlier that they're using the combo of the V60 and the Sennheiser HD 599s. I would say that is a good combo. Um, so Genosis Naked Running Band is an evolved fanny pack. I mean, that still doesn't give me a whole lot of that does, I mean, a fanny pack still has a body part attached to it, right? So James says if MagSafe rivals connecting with Lightning, then I could see the portless iPhone. Well, I don't know in terms of speed. I don't know that I don't know that it'll match straight up like fast charging in terms of speed, but I think it'll do the job. And I mean, Apple probably won't give you the choice at a certain point. Yeah, and I've 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 seen plenty of Lewis Rossman. He's he's a little bit. Well, I haven't watched his stuff in a while, but he used to get like way too upset about stuff, and it made me worry for his like cardiovascular system. I'm the chat keeps coming so fast that I can't keep up. uh yeah, Lewis Rossman in Measured Doses. I think that's probably for the best. Um I mean, he does have valid arguments about what some of Apple's practices are. Um but yeah, I don't know. He seems to when I've watched him, he has seemed to be like so up in arms about it. Um that it just wasn't like it just wouldn't be healthy. But then again, like I lived in New York for 11 years and Louis Rossman reminds me a lot of it reminds me a lot of people like the people in New York. They get very very sort of like almost like anxious and emotional and like over the top about things. They that's one of their ways of communicating. So maybe it's not that big a deal to him. But yeah, YouTube is slow. What's it slow doing? All right, I'm trying to. I think you guys are having your own conversation. All right, I'm afraid of Michael Bird's Apple product analogy. um, the girlfriend that you absolutely adored, but you ended up being her servant rather than a boyfriend. Okay, yeah, I could see that. Um, it's not a it's it's not a power equal relationship, is it? There's a certain amount of codependency on the part of the certain amount of codependency on the part of, of the buyer. Like they can't dictate terms. Apple has no reason to listen to them because they're just going to do what they say anyway. So, all right. Thank you for subbing. If anybody's here and they haven't subbed, I don't know how you got here, but please do subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell notification icon because I'm going live twice a week at least, and 2 to 3 videos a week here on the Painfully Honest Tech channel. 2021 is the year where it all happens. Erica is very good as well. In fact, Erica, I remember she was the first person who I saw review the LG G5 before, like I think either right when it came out or right before it came out, and and she was not impressed. Like the paint job was bad, all that kind of stuff, and so she just ripped into it. Um, Yeah, but she doesn't really do a lot of smartphone stuff anymore that I've seen. I think she's doing a lot of like Nintendo gaming related stuff, but I haven't seen any of her videos for a while. Orbit, thank you for the kind words. I'm trying to get better. Yeah, Louis Rossman is stressful, but I think that's part of the thing. Wait a minute, Mustafa. So you stopped believing in LG the moment Jason switched from wired to AirPods Max. I mean, I still have plenty of. I'm wearing a wired headphone right now. I've got another pair of wired headphones right here for the other computer. I didn't forsake the wired headphones. I just I just gave up. So James asks, what happened to the Painfully Honest Tech podcast? Um, so the Painfully Honest Tech podcast, as we're doing it before, like at the beginning of the year, I just decided to put it on hiatus. I have a new podcast. I haven't promoted the new podcast yet. The new podcast is called Painfully Honest with Jason T. Lewis. It's available on all of your podcast outlets. It is still it still has it's still tech related, but it's also just me kind of ranting about um it's me kind of ranting about whatever I want. Now this past week's episode number 2 was me ranting about how the Marvel Cinematic Universe kind of sucks. And I don't like it. I don't like it. I've got a whole argument about it. It's on the podcast. Painfully Honest with Jason T. Lewis. Subscribe to that podcast now, and I will be sure to make you mad on many other levels, not just tech related. Jason ranting about Tobey Maguire. Well, yes, to a certain extent, yes. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to try and give you like the basic kernel of my argument about really the MCU more than anything else, because I feel like Marvel has a slightly different relationship between its characters and its readers than does DC. And there's a reason for that as well, but I don't have to get in. So when I was a kid, I read comic books all the time. Comic books were my entry point into reading. My grandfather used to get me comic books. And I loved Spider-Man. I loved anything that I could get my hands on. And the thing about comic books, I'm gonna get a little highfalutin educated on you. Comic books are a style of art called sequential art, which means that you have one panel where something happens and a character might say something or do something, and then you have like a negative space, a liminal space in between the next panel, right? And the next panel shows you what happens next, but in between that liminal space in between, you have to make it up for yourself, right? Shots fired on the podcast. That's right. You have to make up the action yourself from one panel to the next. And so when you are reading a comic book, you're working with the artist to create this whole world, right? You've got the character, what they sound like, what they look like, how the action looks in your head, all that different kind of stuff. And I used to think like, oh my God, if they could just make movies like this, that would be so amazing. And then I started watching, of course, there was the Superman movie, and there was the Batman TV series from the 60s, and even the Superman series from the 50s. But I don't think so. Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight series is probably the best iteration of comic book movies that I've seen. However, I think those movies are good because they were made by Christopher Nolan, and Batman is a very interesting and evocative character. And the reason that Batman is more interesting than, say, Superman is because Batman is Batman exists in a gray area between sort of the as well. I mean, it's all cliche. This is all archetypal storytelling, right? So Batman exists between like the dark and the light. Superman is just all light. Superman is the most uninteresting character in the world ever, because Superman can do anything. He can fly, he can, burn through steel with his eyeballs, he can see through stuff. He could do anything, faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, etc., etc., etc. When it came to the Marvel movies, like Spider-Man and Peter Parker were very specific in my brain over all the years that I've listened and watched, or all the years that I've read the books. So now I listen and watch them, and it's Tobey Maguire. Tobey Maguire was in no way what I imagined Spider-Man to look, act, talk, or anything like. It's not to say Tobey Maguire wasn't a quote unquote good Spider-Man. It just wasn't that great for me. I enjoyed the movies, but they're not like cinematic masterpieces. And when it comes to the MCU is interesting because now that the MCU has been so successful, whereas like artists at different times could interpret the characters and what they looked like in slightly different ways, for an entire generation, maybe even two generations, who didn't read comic books in the way that my generation did, or even the generation afterwards, Iron Man is always going to look like Robert Downey Jr. and Captain America is always going to look like Chris Evans. And to me, that is very limiting. That takes away the sort of joy of discovery of the imagination that it takes to read a comic book. It takes the comic book out of the realm where it is most at home and most effective, into a storytelling mode that is not as interesting when it comes. So reading is active, watching is passive. And when you take characters that came to life visually on the page in an active way within the mind of the reader, and then you put them into the passive format of film, right? Then you get into this space where the characters are diminished. They aren't as interesting. Like the dynamic between Captain America and Bucky Barnes, the loss when Bucky falls off the train, the loss when Captain America goes into the cold water and freezes forever. Like, I didn't feel that when I watched Captain America: The First Avenger, right? It didn't feel the same way to me. I've read that origin story many times, and I always had this like a very specific kind of feeling when I read it. So I feel like now that we're getting all these depictions of these characters in incredibly popular films, these characters are always going to be diminished. Now, that is the antithesis of this. Comic book characters are built on archetypes, and archetypes are, like all the different kinds of characters that have existed. I mean, you can look at the Bible, you can look at Lord of the Rings, you can look at Harry Potter, you can look at, like, there are archetypal characters, the wizard, the Messiah character. There's all these different kinds of characters that exist in every story that we tell. And so when you look at Star Wars, at the end of the day, like, Star Wars worked because those characters were written with the intent that they would be fleshed out on film. And so you see Mark Hamill and his mannerisms and his screechy voice and all that kind of stuff in Star Wars, A New Hope. And the archetypal magic works, but when it's comic book movies, it's ruined. Anyway, that was a longer version of my argument than I intended to make, but that's generally my argument. You can go listen to the longer form version of it over there on the podcast, the Painfully Honest podcast with Jason T. Lewis, on the Empire Podcast Network, available wherever the finest podcasts are given away for free. Please rate and subscribe and all those kinds of things. Now, this is the Black Widow is always going to look like the stripper you wish you wish you could take home. Okay, it's a specific reference. I think I know what you mean. You know what comic book female character I was in love with when I was a kid? The Black Cat. There was a season. There was a series of Spider-Man comics where he and the Black Cat were sort of like on again, off again, um, and and there was just something about that white hair. Mm. I was so in love with the Black Cat when I was a kid. Um, what is the next podcast going to be about? That is a very good question, Ace. One that I have not fully considered. I have some ideas. I did see something today that gave me pause. Um, today was like Dr. Seuss's birthday. I don't know if you and so I read this news story that said that I think there are 6 or 7, maybe 8 books that they're no longer going to publish. Um, they're no longer going to publish these Dr. Seuss books because of their portrayal of portrayal of stuff that is inappropriate in the current well, it's inappropriate now. It was inappropriate then, but more accepted. Um, and I mean, I don't know how I feel about that. Um, stopping the publication of books because they, I mean, I guess they're children's books. That's part of it. So anyway, I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about that. I've got some other ideas too, but I don't want to spoil it for you. New podcasts come out on Friday. So I rant into a microphone for about 20, 30 minutes on Thursday, and then it comes out on Friday. Oh yeah. So I heard about this, but I don't know the whole story. I guess Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head are like gender ambiguous now or something. I I don't know. I I I, I don't have any I don't have any problem with that, honestly. But yeah, I mean, I think talking about and being more accepting of all different kinds of cultures in a world and in a nation that's been predominantly uh, white centric for most of its history. I think more of those conversations are good. Sometimes I don't know if we know when or how to have those conversations effectively or find the correct subject matter by which to have those conversations. So now it's just potato head. There's no it's gender neutral, but I mean, do they still have the gender specific clothing or is it just the potato? Uh, um, I don't know. So Eric says the banning of books in a society is a sign of the society's decline. Now, see, this is the interesting part of it. I mean, the Dr. Seuss's estate, I guess, is on board with not publishing these books anymore, and so I don't know if that really counts as I don't know if that really counts as banning the books because they're choosing not to publish them. But then again, I mean, as Snowman is saying here, you know, Ray Bradbury's book, uh, Fahrenheit 451, which is an amazing book that I read it when I was a teenager in like one day, and I just was like it just blew me away. Um, this whole idea of 1984 and the thought police and the firemen in Fahrenheit 451 and the burning of books because they have ideas that might challenge. Um, I don't. I guess I can say that I understand that. I understand why people want to take these books out of like I guess out of publication circulation because they depict race and culture and other things are depicted inappropriately. And Dr. Seuss had a history of being culturally inappropriate um, in his past. So, I mean, I guess that's I don't know. I don't know because I think I, I think you I think you have to own the stuff that this you can't retcon the values, whether those values are more evolved and more sort of kind to people in general and more thoughtful. You can't retcon those kinds of things. You can't retcon today's sensibilities onto the sensibilities of another era, as much as you might want to. And so when we talk about Dr. Seuss uh, and some of his, I mean, he wrote hundreds of books. I mean, we're talking about a few. Um, we're talking about a few books in many, and none of the really good ones. Although I think there was one about a zoo. That's one of the ones that's being taken out of publication. And I remember reading that book to my daughter when she was a kid. And that was only like 10 plus years ago. Yeah, I think that once you sort of get into this realm of like thought police and you get into this realm of retconning current values onto stuff that was created in the past, then you start to like you start to miss the point. I mean, we had to go through all of that. All of that had to exist for us to get to where we are now in the more enlightened state that we are at this point. We had to go through all that stuff. I mean, I it is a very difficult question and one that I'm considering bringing up for the podcast this coming week. However, I don't know. You want to talk about those like hot button issues? That is definitely one of them. But books are near and dear to my heart. The books to me, like I'm not a very like go to churchy kind of person. I don't have anything against anyone who that is their thing. I don't I don't want to take that away from anybody. But if I were to have like a religion, it would be very much centered around how much I learned from and took from all the books that I had available to me when I was a kid, how much I read and how much I learned about the world and people in the world from reading widely a bunch of different stuff. And so when you start talking about limiting that um, in any way, it makes me very nervous. I have not read The Pedestrian. In fact, I think that Fahrenheit 451 might be the only the only Bradbury book I've read. Although I had to have read something else, maybe some short stories. I had to have read something else, but that was the one that really got me. Um, do I think there'll be Mandalorian season 3 since they dropped one of the actors? I mean, are you talking about Gina Carano? I mean, yeah, the Mandalorian. The Mandalorian is not going anywhere in my estimation. The Gina Carano stuff is unfortunate, and again, it sort of falls into this. It sort of falls into this whole thought police thing. But I think when you look at the Gina Carano situation, you can make two arguments, and I'm not making either one of these arguments. I'm saying that there are two arguments that you can make. You can make the argument that Gina Carano is, at least by default, as someone who acts on that television show, a representative of that show and by extension the Disney Corporation, right? And so when she says things that are untoward, or at least not as when she says things that are insensitive, I don't think anybody can disagree that what she said was insensitive. There are one of two ways that you could go. you could say as Disney that you could say these things are unacceptable. This is not the first time that that we've had this situation occur, and we don't feel good being associated with this, so we're parting ways. Or as Disney, you could say we support anyone's right, First Amendment right to free speech, and therefore, while we do not endorse nor do we agree with the statements made by this person, we still support them as a member of the Disney family, and therefore, right? You could make either one of those arguments. Disney chose to make the former, and yeah. So that brings up the whole other question of should you, should you as an actor, and I think I specifically think about this when it comes to actors, because actors are they are paid to portray characters. So they're not out there representing themselves. They're representing these other characters, right? Um, there's a big conversation among actors about whether or not it's not necessarily appropriate's not the right word. Whether or not an actor should bring their own personal views into the public discussion. Um, so I know that like Kurt Russell has said that he has never spoken about any of his personal beliefs for any reason, because he didn't feel like it was the place of an actor to talk about that stuff. So, yeah. Um, so Darren asks, why would you jeopardize such a great opportunity? I don't know that she. Well, I I think she. It's hard to say. I don't know why, but I think some people like to use the platform that they have to vocalize their thoughts, and that job amplified her platform, and as such, uh, sometimes you can amplify your platform, and your platform can be amplified to a degree that you are not maybe aware of. I mean, I know it happened to me when I went from, not having, um, like having fewer than 100,000 subs, and then suddenly like having more than 100,000, and like the relationship with the audience became different, but I didn't know that until after it had already occurred. So, it could have been, but she's been famous for quite a while. Um, she's been famous for quite a while, and so she has to be aware of. And I know that when you're part of a big sports entertainment uh, industry, you are trained on public relations and how to do this stuff. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I don't know. And Franklin's right. I mean, free speech isn't necessarily a license to say whatever you want. I mean, maybe in its broadest interpretation, you could see it as that. Um, however, I think a lot of people conflate their right to free speech to their right to free speech extending to privately owned platforms like like Twitter or Facebook or something like that. And that's what I mean. People, Twitter and Facebook have made choices about what kind of speech they want to have on their platforms, and it's their right to do that. They are privately owned and operated, and so. And a snowman says here, like free speech is a license to say whatever you want, but when you're paid by someone else, uh, yeah, usually that kind of stuff is written into a contract. And it may very well be that it was written into the contract that Gina Carano had. I don't know. Somebody did tell me that she was not under contract at the time, and they decided that to not renew or renegotiate. So I don't know. I think that at the end of the day, you have to be personally responsible for whatever it is that you do, right? So if you say something that you very staunchly believe in, and you feel like it's something it's important enough to say to put things in jeopardy, perhaps with your employment, then you have to be able to take to sort of like roll with the consequences of that. There's a level of personal responsibility that doesn't get factored in here, that each person in all of these situations has to take into account. I mean, Hawker says you have to walk on eggshells so you don't offend anybody. And to a certain extent, I mean, what is I think I saw somebody earlier said that, like, for many, many years, there were a lot of things that weren't okay that were allowed to let slide or were considered okay. And now we're in that transition period where we realize that a lot of those things weren't okay, and so we're trying to correct. Unfortunately, people like, they overcorrect or undercorrect or whatever, and that's ultimately, I mean, you should do your best to know the consequences of anything that you say, and understand that that's your own personal responsibility. And if you want to make people mad, you can do it. If you want to offend people, you can do it. I think it's best not to offend people, in a hurtful way. I attack, not to attack the things that they have no control over. But to, I mean, with this channel, I often try and challenge people's ideas. The ideas that they have about the technology that they love is part of what Painfully Honest Tech is all about. So I will put a hard challenge on that stuff. But there's nothing, and if I offend people when I do that, it's okay. I take personal responsibility for whatever the outcome of that offense might be. Whether it be, I say something about a company on a live stream and they get mad about it and don't want to work with me anymore or whatever. I think at the end of the day, I think that's like, that's part of the deal. So, and in a country as widespread, as big, as diverse as the United States, not everybody is going to have the same idea of propriety. And that's sort of the conversation that we're in. And Michael Bird brings up the good point that free speech is not something that common Europeans had in the time before the United States was we wrote the Constitution, and that's why we put it in there as one of our inalienable rights, that anybody has the right to speak freely. Usually free speech is determined as, you have the right to speak freely as long as whatever you say is not injurious to another person or entity or group of people. That's kind of how it goes. But Ace brings up, today in rock and roll history, the Beatles began filming what would be their first feature film, A Hard Day's Night, at Marylebone Station in London. I love that movie. I love that movie so much. If you haven't seen A Hard Day's Night, I don't care if you're a Beatles fan or not. There's something about that movie that captures um that captures like some essential thing about youth and just like the frenetic the frenetic feeling of youth as it was embodied in the Beatles. Anyway, Tech for Now says private platforms, just like YouTube channels, get money from the public. If someone on the platform does anything that will cause the platform, to lose money, I guess, they'll kick you out. Yeah, yeah. I mean, YouTube is a business. Twitter is a business. Um, we've gone through these growing pains. It's been a little while since we've had an adpocalypse on YouTube, but we've had several adpocalypses where high-profile YouTubers have said or done really inappropriate things that caused advertisers to say, I don't know if I want to be involved here. um, yeah. So at the end of the day, like it has affected a lot of people, but that's also the growing pains of something like a YouTube or a Twitter or something like that, where the power of the platform is not entirely known until boundaries are pushed, and then the platform has to decide YouTube has to decide where it stands on those kinds of things, and YouTube has made those stances, Twitter has made those stances, et cetera, et cetera. And I think Jay Williams brings up a good point here too, that the First Amendment allows you to say what you want, but it doesn't absolve you of the consequences of saying it, right? Whether those consequences be, whatever those consequences may be, um, you can say it, but you got to deal with it. Why is anyone talking about Mr. Potato Head? No one cares, plays with it. I don't know, man. It's definitely a marketing move. Anytime you're trying to sell stuff, it's marketing. So, so yeah. So Twisted here says, bought a Note 10 Plus 5G and the V60, but honestly don't know if I should keep the V60 now that LG Mobile is going to go out of business. I I don't think there'd be any problem with keeping the V60. I mean, I don't think, well, we don't really know what's going on yet, and ultimately I don't think LG is just going to like shut the doors and take off. They've committed themselves to 2 years worth of warranty support for those phones regardless. So I don't see them like taking off. So I think you'd be safe with the purchase. Anyway, folks, we've gone far afield here, uh, which is my fault because that's what I do once I get past, like, say, an hour and a half or so. Um, do I think the LG V50 will get Android 11? That is a good question. I hope that it does. Because like I said, of the two, I think the V50 I still like. I mean, it has that on the back fingerprint reader, which I like a lot. Um, the under the screen fingerprint reader, the one on the S21 is the best one that I've used in terms of under the screen fingerprint readers because it's fast. It usually works. But I haven't had that experience with most other under the screen fingerprint readers. So, um, Stephen, I will probably get an iPhone 13. I mean, I can't, as is evidenced by the fact that I'm carrying a Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra right now. I can't resist the new phone. My willpower does not extend to that length. So I'm sure that I'll get the iPhone 13 and I'll cover it and talk about it and all that kind of stuff. Just because I mean, I still really love smartphones. I mean, we've been here for 2 hours almost exclusively talking about cell phones. Um, but yeah, I think I'll get it for sure. Twisted says, "Can you justify Samsung removing the SD slot on the S21 Ultra? Phone geared for recording a lot of video and taking a lot of photos." I don't like the fact that they did. I think that it was a nice feature to have. I have a feeling that they did a lot of market research to find out how many of their customers were really using that feature and found that, it wasn't enough to warrant keeping it. I I don't know that for sure, but that's what I would think they would have done. Um, but yeah, I mean, I liked having it as an option. Um, you definitely like you get more onboard storage these days than you ever did when that feature was first introduced. When that feature was first introduced, it was like you have 16 gigabytes of storage and you can put in another like 64 and thereby like quadruple your storage. But these days, like if you get a phone and it has 256 gigabytes of storage, it's less of a big deal. But I understand what you're saying in terms of like if you're a content creator of some kind and you need that space. Yeah, I totally get it. Well, the thing about tech for now, the thing about Apple being successful without the SD card reader or the SD card slot is um I mean I think that's another example of the Apple customer and the Android customer, the iOS customer and the Android customer being fundamentally different in a lot of ways. I think that's a product of that. Well, I'm getting tired, folks. This the one thing about the solo streaming is that you end up talking a lot more than you do when streaming in a group. So yeah, I'm getting a little froggy, a little tired. So I'm gonna sign off here now. Again, if you're listening to this after the fact, you are a champion, and I think you're awesome. For the rest of you guys, thanks so much for being here again. Had a bunch of people here, really good discussion, really good stuff all the way around. I do appreciate it. You guys are the most awesome, the most awesome. If you want to be in on the members only chats that are coming up, the members only live streams and that kind of thing, membership costs as little as $2 to get in on that. And membership, I mean, $2 might not seem like much, but in the end, it every little bit helps. So, um, so yeah, and I love building the community. So if you're interested in that, memberships are always available. I got merch down below as well as links to all different kinds of stuff, including a link to our sponsor Restream. Uh, why stream when you can restream? I'm gonna keep using that. I hope Jermaine's still here to hear me use that. Anyway, you guys have been awesome. Thanks so much for being here. Once again, I'm Jason. This is Painfully Honest Tech. Tech So